Can God create a God more powerful than himself? We've spent too long hiding beneath the comfort of old answers, too content resting on dogma, too afraid to shake the foundations of belief. But today, let's cross that line. Let's ask the question that would make imams, priests, pastors, and philosophers sweat. Can God create a God more powerful than himself? At first glance, this question might sound absurd or even blasphemous, but precisely because it feels dangerous, it deserves to be asked. For it is questions like this that rattle civilizations, stretch the boundaries of logic, and sometimes open the path toward deeper understanding. God is almighty, but in nearly all monotheistic religions, God is understood as all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipresent, and of course, perfect. But behind these majestic attributes lies a paradox that infuriates logic. If God is all-powerful, can he create something greater than his own power? This is not mere wordplay. It's a philosophical bomb that has unsettled theologians since ancient times. If the answer is no, then there's something God cannot do, which means his power has limits. But if the answer is yes, then the God who created is no longer greater than his creation. Either answer challenges the very meaning of omnipotent. This problem is known in philosophy as the Omnipotence Paradox. A more popular version of it asks, can God create a stone so heavy he cannot lift it? But the version we're asking is even more radical. Can God create another God more powerful than himself? Two gods, the world would collapse. Let's begin by examining the assumption. Is it possible for there to be more than one God? In most theistic traditions, the answer is a firm no. There is only one God. But in this thought experiment, we momentarily adopt a freer perspective, one that allows for the hypothetical possibility that God could create an equal or even greater entity. So we ask, is such a thing logically possible? If God creates another God more powerful than himself, then the creator becomes inferior to the creation. But how can a creator be less than what it creates? Isn't the creator always prior, more sovereign, more authoritative? This is where we hit the heart of the paradox. If God cannot create a more powerful God, then there is something he cannot do. Thus, he is not truly all-powerful. But if he can do it, then he willingly ends his own supremacy. In either case, the title all-powerful begins to wobble. Philosophy versus faith. Many theologians respond to this question by rejecting the logic behind it. They say, the question itself is flawed. Their argument, often echoed by philosophers like Thomas Aquinas, is that God cannot do things that are logically contradictory. God cannot create a square circle, a stone he cannot lift, or a God greater than himself. In other words, God's power is limited by logic itself. But that is precisely where the trap lies. If God's power is subject to logic, then logic is higher than God. Then God is no longer the ultimate authority, for he is bound by something else, namely, reason. If we say that God created logic, then surely he could break it too. But if he cannot, then logic becomes the true sovereign. So who is truly God, the deity or the law of logic? More than that, how can we be sure that our concept of power, a human interpretation, accurately reflects the reality of the divine? Perhaps our question itself is the product of a primitive brain trying to project the hierarchies of the human world onto the realm of the divine. But precisely because of our limitations, we must ask. For asking is the only tool we have to glimpse the incomprehensible. Just wordplay? Some might say, this is just a word game, not a pursuit of truth. But isn't philosophy always born from wordplay? Wasn't Socrates executed for playing with questions that made people think? We're not looking for a final answer. We're trying to reveal the boundaries of reason and faith. If our belief crumbles under a single question, then perhaps it is not the question that must be suppressed, but the faith that must be strengthened. After all, this question is not an insult to God. On the contrary, it is the highest form of intellectual devotion. We ask not because we don't believe, but because we understand. God is not only to be believed, but to be contemplated. If the answer is yes, then what? Let's speculate for a moment. Suppose God creates another God more powerful than himself. What would that mean? First, it would mean that the original God voluntarily surrenders his supremacy. He creates a successor. This sounds a bit like the story of Lucifer, who, in some interpretations, sought to rival God. But in this case, the Creator himself brings forth a being greater than himself. Then another question arises. Is this act not the ultimate proof of power? Isn't the highest form of power the willingness to give it up? Or perhaps this question reflects humanity's longing for an evolving divine figure. A God who does not stagnate in old attributes, but who evolves, even creating a better version of himself. If that's the case, then this isn't just a question. It's a projection of the human soul reaching to expand its grasp of the transcendent. Are we becoming the third God? Here's the final chilling question. If God can create a more powerful God, could the next creation be us? Are human beings, through technology, artificial intelligence, and cognitive achievement, on the verge of claiming divinity? Is humanity's project to transcend its own limitations? And if we create something more powerful than ourselves, are we mimicking God and creating another God? This is where we step into dangerous territory, between theology, transhumanism, and fragile faith. But that's exactly where the fascination lies. At the edge of logic, on the brink between knowledge and mystery, at the point where belief is tested not by ridicule, but by the courage to think radically. Conclusion, a question that doesn't need an answer. In the end, the question, can God create a God more powerful than himself, may not have a definitive answer. But its value lies not in resolution, but in the bravery to ask. In a world where questions are constrained by fear, it is precisely these kinds of questions that liberate us, not to destroy faith, but to refine it, not to break belief, but to deepen it. Because sometimes, only by shaking the heavens, we discover that its foundations are stronger than we imagined. So the real question is not whether God can create another God more powerful, but whether we are brave enough to ask,